it's like a cancer strategy. Let's just grow as fast as we can, and whatever the impact is, it doesn't really matter. We'll figure it out later.
I have a saying that I learned from my last mentor, Lynn Morris, who I partnered with for years. Growth for growth's sake is bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And most people, especially going for VC money, that's what they want. They want to see the revenues going like this. They don't care if some cash flow measure, EBITDA, net income, whatever, is negative. They want to see revenue growth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's growing for growth's sake. And if you can't simultaneously show that at some point in time, you can slow the growth and start generating cash, and that those returns have a valuation that's worthwhile and an ROI that works.
Yeah. Yeah, that you've grown value, that you've created value.
And that's the beauty when I worked with Lynn. I mean, he came from Maricon Associates, and their fundamental tenet was value creation.
Mm-hmm.
And every single strategic financial planning model that I build, that's the metric.
Mm-hmm.
What's the value of the company when you make the changes? Mm-hmm. Most other people, when they build a model, they're looking for revenue growth so that they can multiply by some number and come up with a value. And that's not a valid way to create value.
So, well, this is a series of blogs that I hope you write soon. So let me ask you a question about this, because when I hear growth for growth's sake, I get what you mean, and what it looks like is that it's actually driven by the investors, right? The investors want the business to grow in a certain way so they get a return on their investment.
And they can show an exit because a revenue multiple, we know what that looks like.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
So are you saying then that there's such a thing as VCs who won't push that kind of growth or won't require that growth? They'll actually respond to a value-based financial model rather than a grow financial model? Because my understanding is like that's just how the game is played, and it's fucked up.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that that's how I work.
Okay. I was hoping like you knew some people who are like, oh yeah, there are some investors who.
So when I build a financial model, I have 3 measures of valuation built into every single model: a revenue multiple, an EBITDA multiple, and a full discounted cash flow analysis that takes planning period cash flows, post-planning period cash flows, discounts them all back to today, and that's the value. So that last one is by far the most rigorous and takes revenues, expenses, and capital into account, whereas the first 2 don't, right? The revenue multiple is just looking at top-line revenue. You could be going into the toilet for the rest of it, but it's just revenue. And some VCs use that. Many VCs like an EBITDA multiple because in their mind it takes into account, operating expenses, SG&A, along with cost of goods sold. The problem is it doesn't take into account capital investment, equipment, R&D, all that kind of stuff. And it doesn't take discounted cash flow into account. They go out X number of years and they say the multiple's 4. And the reason the multiple's 4 is because 14 other companies that we've invested in have a multiple of 4, and that was the exit value. So that's why we're using 4. But VCs can't get their head around a DCF valuation. And I've presented it before.
Really?
No, many times have I presented it. And their answer is no, we don't. That's not the way we work. It's not the way people who are going to buy this company work. So we don't care. So the reason
that's not true. People who buy companies are often shrewd enough to use DCF.
Yes, but not most of the companies that are willing to buy a startup that's got this kind of growth rate. Now, are they factoring that in? If I'm Xerox, am I factoring that in when I buy somebody who's a startup? Yeah, of course I am. But the VCs and the company that's being sold don't. So I've been not thrown out of the room, but I've been looked at like I've got horns growing out of my head. I swear to God, when I brought up DCF in the past, they look at me like, you're in academia. You're not in VC startup land. This is what the professors who have their PhDs do at Stanford.
So in other words, the VC startup land only wants to look at the top line revenue growth, and they don't want to look at cash flow at
Top
all,
line
much less
or EBITDA. That's it.
Okay, they'll look at multiple.
They will look at EBITDA, especially with companies like a software company. They want to make sure they've got positive EBITDA, that there's positive growth, that kind of thing. But no look at capital expenditures, no look at DCF over time, no look at where this thing is going to be down the road. So that's why all three are built into every model I build. And at the end, it compares revenue, EBITDA, and total discounted cash flow.
Well, it's really interesting because I've had on my list of blogs to create, I've been calling it the startup bubble because I've been watching it burst. And I think this is another really good angle for you to talk about because, you know, it's like, what do you see as happening? Like the kind of startups we have today were like, they were invented right before the dot bomb of 2000, right? And they've persisted through that somehow. Do you have an opinion about like what the future of this kind of thing is? Is VC going to die one day when people wake up and realize that 90% of startups fail and all this money is just getting wasted, or what do you think?
No, I think that what's going to happen is basically what's happening today, that 1 or 2 out of 10 investments that VCs put their money into grow significantly and get acquired well. And that's what the limited partners and the VCs make their money on. 5 of them tank, and the remaining 3 or 4 are middling.
Stagnate.
Yeah, they may get sold, but it's not going to be a great return.
So time out. So you're saying the VCs look at this situation, those numbers, and they see it as just a diverse portfolio and it nets out to being okay? Meanwhile,
absolutely. You have 1 or 2 successes that are really big out of the 10 that you invest in, you're great.
Meanwhile, the CEOs and the founders of these businesses all of their employees, if they looked at the arrangement with the VC and knew the VC was thinking, well, there's a 1 in 10 chance this is really going to work, there's a lot of acceptable loss in here, the employees and the people who care about that business would be like, well, what, 1 in 10, that sucks. We want 9 in 10, right?
No, but that's the issue. All the employees in these companies know that they're that 1 or 2 in 10.
They think they are.
They know it. This widget is that 1 or 2 in 10. And that's what keeps people motivated to do this.
Meanwhile, but then they're operating, so they think they're the chosen ones. The VCs don't care because they're playing numbers.
Exactly.
They know just have to meet minimal criteria, and they know the portfolio is balanced.
And
the VCs don't care that the people who think they're the chosen ones are probably wrong.
Why would they? They know their model works. And but if you look at any other investor pool out there, nobody worldwide has done as good of a job as Silicon Valley VCs at picking good startups. That tells you that the rest of the world is not as good at 1 out of 10. They're less than 1 out of 10. They're half out of 10, or 1 out of 20, or 1 out of 30, which is mind-boggling.
Yeah. The whole system doesn't work, and the whole system is not in reality.
No, go back one level and look at angel investors who are investing small amounts of money, but in a lot more companies. Their success rate's probably 1 out of 20 or 30.
This is a startup bubble. I mean, like, that VCs have really no interest, not nearly as much interest in the company's success as you think. That's like frightening. That should scare the shit out of the CEO, right?
And they will never say that, of course.
No. But the proof is in the pudding, right? Because when you say, hey, here's a model that would blah, 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 they're like, oh yeah, we don't need that. Because they're hedged.
Right.
Oy.
And again, if they could do better, they would. And they're the best out there at doing this. That's a point that we can't lose. Nobody has done this better. Nobody.